What is going on? Welcome back to the Matt Graham Podcast. I'm here with my wife, Shayna, once again. Remember, you're on audio too.
Oh, yeah. Hi.
She waved at the camera. Today, we are answering some questions that we put out on Instagram a few weeks ago. It took us a little while to get around to doing this podcast, but nonetheless, here we are. So for those that are unaware, Shayna and I are expecting our first child here in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, give or take.
Yep.
Whenever he decides to show up.
Yep. Her due date is February 5th, which is your birthday.
Yep. Very exciting. I secretly hope he comes on my birthday so he can have my birthday.
Right. That would be cool, but also very expensive.
True.
So as you can tell by our verbiage, it is a boy. That has been confirmed. Many of you who follow me on Instagram probably already know this. Many of you who follow me on TikTok probably don't. And I don't know about the YouTube people. We haven't talked about it. But today we're answering questions, like I said, and we're going to jump right in. But first, we're going to be answering some extra questions over on Matt Graham Unplugged, which is the premium podcast that comes out every single week, which is either an extension of this episode or its own separate episode. So be sure to check it out. We'll be answering questions such as, what did we name him? Why did we name him what we named him? What are our thoughts on homeschooling versus public school, vaccines, and some of the more controversial and juicier topics. So head over there to notmattgraham.com/unplugged to engage with that podcast and soak up all the content. So without further ado, let's jump into the first question. All right, question number one, what was the reaction when I knew she was first pregnant? So, well, we went up there, and it's kind of an interesting story, which we'll dive into more on the premium podcast, but we were up in Boston for a funeral, and it just so turns out a few days into our trip up there, Shayna was like, I'm definitely pregnant.
Definitely. I definitely knew. I knew a couple days before, probably like a day or two before I told him. I just intuitively knew. I started to get weird, like not so much cravings, but like I was getting food aversion to things. And I was definitely a couple days late, which isn't super like off for me, but I just had this gut feeling. And then we were being such pansies about it because we had a lot going on. We had a death in the family, so we were juggling all kinds of kind of like sad things. And then all of a sudden this was like on our plate. And we were being such babies about like officially going to get a test to like know the answer because we were just so like, oh my God, is this really happening? So we went to the grocery store, left the grocery store and stood in the aisle and said, do we go get a test too? And we were like, no. Then we left the grocery store and right next door was a Walgreens and we looked at each other. We were like, we need to go get a test. So we left the grocery store and did a U-turn and went right into Walgreens. And then I just stood at the aisle and looked at all the options and I was like, which one do I get? So naturally I texted my best friend. She told me which one to get. And then we took a test back at his grandparents' house when we had the whole family there because it was, like I said, it was like a very family-oriented weekend.
It was Father's Day.
It was. Actually, it was Father's Day. It was that Sunday.
Yep.
So
ironically enough,
the tests take a couple minutes. They're not super instant. So I took the test and then we go into our bedroom and I put it on the little nightstand while I went to go hang up my jacket. And as soon as Matt just happened to look over at it while I was in the closet and he goes, holy crap, Shayna, it says that you're pregnant. And I was like, I knew I was. Like I wholeheartedly knew, but like seeing the words on the test that said, I think it said
yes.
It said yes. Yeah. It didn't say pregnant or not pregnant. But yeah, his reaction was like total, his face was just, he was so excited. I have a funny picture of you. Like you were just I can throw it up on the screen. We'll blip it up there, but it was fun. For me, I knew, so like the shock of it wasn't as intense, but for him to like see the words, like he was like, holy shit. So it was really fun.
Yeah. I mean, moment. I've been waiting to have kids for quite a while. As if you listen to the first episode with her, we discussed that. I don't know if it was the first or second episode where we discussed that, but I've been very pro having kids for a very long time. And so, as soon as we got married is when I started trying. It's not when you started trying, but basically we kind of got to a point where we were like, okay, well, it's been a few months like that. Let's like actually give it a shot. And so lo and behold, it happened. And here we are 7-8 months later, and he is due in February. And
just a couple weeks. We're so excited to meet him.
I can't wait. I'm
so excited.
Yeah. I that's just, there's not many words to describe my excitement, but I imagine it's everything that I've anticipated, and based off the reviews of parenthood that I've gotten from other parents, it is. And so I'm looking forward to it. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be incredibly rewarding, and I'm already just so impatient.
Yeah, we're ready. I don't want. It's one of those like double-edged swords, because you don't want to wish time away, because I think as all parents know, and really all of us realize how quickly time passes. So I'm like, I feel his kicks, and he's growing so much, and it's so special. But like part of us is just like, we just want to unzip my belly and just pull him out. Like we're just ready to meet him, and then we're gonna look back in 6 months and be like, I miss those days where I could feel his kicks. So we're trying to be like patient and just like enjoy each moment, because we know how quickly it's gonna go by. But
yeah, and I do this thing to like put time in perspective, which she doesn't really understand. But what I do is we have 6 weeks left until the due date. What were we doing 6 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And that kind of puts it into perspective as to how quickly that time can go by. And like I said, like she said, you don't want to wish time away or wish time would go faster, because time is our most valuable asset. But at the same time, I'm very excited to be a father and do the father thing and walk our $1,500 stroller around because that was totally necessary.
It's going to grow with the family. Okay. It was a one-time purchase.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not naming the name because we're not sponsored by them. So maybe one day we will be, and I'll let you know what stroller it is. But in any event, yeah, my reaction was very excited. I was not. I didn't have the, oh my God, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm so happy about this. I don't care what it takes. We'll figure, and we weren't even in a bad position, but still you have those thoughts of like, can we do it? What, you have that excitement, but also that nervousness that pairs with it of like the potential things that could happen. And I certainly, have those, and I have things that concern me, which I think is actually question number 2, but I'm not doubting our capacity to put ourselves in the best position to give this kid the best life possible, in any stretch of the imagination. I think that we are fully capable. When I see some of the people that are parents in the world and have kids that manage to do all right, I'm confident that we'll be able to do okay too.
We're very fortunate, and we have a good village around us. So
yeah,
we're excited.
Very excited. So question number 2, what's one thing that you're excited about and one thing that you're nervous about?
Just one of each? Oy.
Just one of each. I guess I'll start. One thing that I'm excited about is teaching him things. You're so good at that stuff with kids. Anytime I'm around kids, especially when they're in that fun age where they start to learn stuff and start to understand stuff, that's where I have the most fun. I just like teaching people things. I like teaching kids how to do stuff. Like, your brother's stepdaughter was here, 7 years old, and we were out in the garage lifting weights.
Like time went by and we're like, where's Matt and Dahlia? And they were gone for hours. Like he's in here with her, teaching her how to edit video and sitting on the camera and having her film stuff and teaching her how to do deadlifts. And she's like a sponge. She just wants to learn it all. And he just loves that. He loves teaching. He slows things down. He has like crazy patience to be able to just, I think your skill with kids is you don't treat them like they're little kids. You treat them like they're functioning humans that can actually absorb information, and you don't baby them so much. So I think they gravitate to him a lot, and he has that patience and that fun side to him. So he's really good at that.
I really enjoy the learning process, and I like watching kids go through the learning process and try something and fail, and figure it out, give it another try, figure it out, and giving them little tips on things and seeing their sponge brains just absorb it super quickly. And
then the excitement of when they do get it.
Right.
It's just like,
it's the best
it's just
thing.
it's like instant. It's just, you get to watch it in real time, which is, I think, is really cool.
Right. And you can see their minds work. And they're like, especially like the really curious kids, like they you can just see the gears turning when you tell them something and when you teach them something and when they're trying to figure something out. And I think that's the coolest thing. So having a son, especially, to where, you know, I'm going to teach him all of the things that I know how to do. I'm super excited for that. And that to me is the most exciting part of fatherhood, because it's just I get to do that full time. You know, I get to teach my little person how to do cool stuff. You know,
best friend for life.
Exactly.
Little buddy. It'll be fun.
So what's something you're excited about?
I definitely think, to piggyback off that, I'm very excited to just start this new adventure with him. Like, I think we've really done like an amazing job of getting our relationship to where it's at, and it was a long haul. If you don't know the story, feel free to zip back and watch our first couple of podcasts because we go over it all.
Episode 3.
Yeah. And so I think we're just so happy with where we are within ourselves that we're just so ready to like take on the next thing. And I think it'll be a challenge. I think it'll be a huge adjustment, as everyone says it is. But I think becoming parents with him is just something that I'm really excited for. And just seeing you be a dad, I'm excited about. And then just all the fun new things that we get to do with a little kid, a little baby. Like, you know, we live 30 minutes from Disney. Just like seeing things through his eyes will just be so fun. So I'm excited. I'm excited for those things. And then the soonest thing I'm most excited for is just like obviously holding him for the first time, but like that little newborn scrunch. If you don't know what I'm talking about, like when babies are born and they're so little and tiny, they're just stuck in their little newborn fetal position, and it's just like the cutest little thing in the world to me. So I'm excited for those little things. But
yeah, I think that this child is going to bring out much more of like the kid side of me that you don't see too much of. Like, yeah, I'm silly. We're silly and goofy with each other, but like, it's just going to go to another level with a child, you know, like
it'll be fun. It'll be a whole new side that we get to kind of meet of one another and just navigate. And I think we're such a good team as it is. So I'm really excited to go through the highs and the lows, honestly, because that's what you grow. But I'm excited about it. Speaking
of lows, what is one thing that you're nervous about? I'll have you go first on this one.
I think as far as like from a parent perspective, I'm one of those, the type of person that I am, I know I'm going to have to make adjustments to who I am as a core human being to make parenthood work better and not stress myself out over the little things. Like, for example, I'm super OCD, like I'm super like want efficiency and I want things to work out the way that we plan them to and all that. I'm not so much a type A, but I'm very much so like
you're very organized. You're just a very organized person who likes things to be in their place. And when you have a child, things do not go in their place.
Right. And even beyond like the mess or whatever, is just like the efficiency of how we do things and like, you know, the process of how you make your coffee in the morning, like do it as efficiently as possible. So for me, it's like it's not that I'm not looking forward to it, but I know it's going to be a challenge for me is to like slow down a little bit and just like have the patience and not worry if like the laundry is piled up for a little bit and not worry if, you know, you're just the little things, you know, those sorts of things. I'm not worried about it, but I know it's something that I'm going to have to like really be cautious of and adjust. And then I think the obvious answer is there's just the navigating the never ending worry about your children. You know, like that's your new mind. Like the minute we found out we were pregnant, like that's when it starts. So you just have that piece of your brain that's like the what if brain, you know, what if this happens? What if that happens? So I think that's just like that perpetual worry as a parent that you just kind of have to navigate. So those are two things that I'm anticipating will be an adjustment for me. But since I'm aware of them, I'm hoping it won't be as bad. But, and I'll have him to level my brain out because he's not emotional. So if I get anxious about those things, he'll just be able to use his logic brain to like reason with me and I'll probably handle it well over time.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly share that sentiment in terms of, you know, the what if brain and worried about what could happen at every single stage, you know, because you worry about one particular thing happening in the womb and then you're like, well, then there's this thing that could happen, once he's out.
It never
and then
ends.
once he's 5, he could fall off his bike and crack his head open.
Right,
and then
right.
it's like, just thinking of all these potential possibilities of things that could go wrong. It takes a toll on you when you fixate on it a lot. And it's just like anything else, if you have the same sort of anxieties about yourself in terms of, what could happen to you, you have to take the same approach with a child. And I'm not, and I just want to preface everything that we say that might be construed as advice. We are not parents yet.
Yeah.
We do not have this child yet.
This is just our approach. This is where our mindsets are and how we're going to move forward.
Right. Everything that we talk about in terms of like our parenting strategy is a strategy. It is not the gospel. It is not perfect advice. It is not, this is what you should do with your child. This is what we plan to do with our child. And so with all that being said, I want all the parents listening to this that are going to say, oh yeah, I tried that. Oh, I did this or I did that. Good luck.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wait till you
just
have
wait. The just
right.
wait people are my favorite. Oh, just wait. Oh, just wait. You enjoy your alone time now, or enjoy going to the bathroom by yourself now. And it's just like the just wait people it's kind of heartbreaking because you can just tell they're usually the more stressed out type of person, and they view parenthood as kind of like
a burden.
Yeah. Like I was going to say a burden, and I don't want to generalize people because not everyone, people have, in my opinion, most people have good intentions. It's just funny. Like when you become pregnant, everyone has the just wait comments. It's like, what a silly way to talk to somebody who's about to start a new chapter in their life,
Yeah. I think people project the obstacles that they failed to overcome in their own situation onto you and say that you're condemned to the same reality. And the reason that I had those problems is a problem with parenthood and not a problem with me. And it's the same thing with marriage, right? You have people that are like, oh, the old ball and chain. I guess you're going to be saying yes, dear, the rest of your life.
Happy life. We were like,
right.
No, it's not exactly our approach here, but thank you.
Right. Exactly. That's not how we operate. I'm not going to be,
doesn't usually work
I'm
out
not
very
going to
well.
dote on you and bend to everything that you say, just as I would expect the same thing from you. And this is just a much broader conversation of people projecting their own problems onto others as if that's the problem with marriage or that's the problem with parenthood. No, the problem is with you and how you chose to navigate your marriage and how you chose to navigate parenthood. And so with all that being said, everything that we say in terms of our parenting strategy is just what we plan to do. And so save your comment, save your, just wait till this thing that happened, this very specific thing that happened that didn't happen to you. So therefore everything you have is easy. No, just leave it alone. Say congratulations, thumbs up, and then we'll move on. In any event, something that I'm nervous about, not necessarily nervous about, but just something that's going to be a pain in the ass is dealing with people and dealing with the type of people that we just described, but also the type of people that would prefer that we parent our child in a particular way that is more conducive to how like they want us to parent our child. And the way we're parenting our child is that we plan to parent our child is going to be very different than, how the modern day people tend to parent their child, where they helicopter parent and they let their kid run the show and, what do you want for dinner? And like, that was a weird comment, but how you've articulated it before where, parents will make 6 different things for dinner for 6 different kids. It's like, no, You're the kid and we're the parent. And, of course we'll dive into that later, but just something that is going to be a pain that I'm anticipating is people wanting us to parent, wanting our kid to be normal and saying, oh, your kid's not going to be normal because, you don't feed him this. Your kid's not going to be normal because you don't throw an iPad in front of him, when he's screaming or whatever.
Just like the never ending opinions and unwanted advice that you get, I think just comes with parenthood, that territory, which we've learned just through pregnancy. It's funny. But yeah, that'll be hard because we're definitely going to do things I guess they would be more traditional, but not in today's society. So it'll be tough because, not everyone lives their lives like that. So a lot of people won't understand, but it's not their position. They don't need to understand. They just need to respect it. And then hopefully over time, they'll just know it's for, his greater good.
Yeah. One of the questions that we got that we'll tap into here at the end of the podcast is how are we planning to make sure our child is different from, the Gen Z iPad kid. And that's going to be a conversation that we have later on. So stay tuned. We're going to go into detail. But we're going to jump to question number 3. And before that, I'm going to pee. Now that my bladder is empty, let's jump into question number 3. People always say you have to be mentally prepared to have a kid. How much of that is true?
I don't know for me, like I was never really ready. It just felt like it was the right thing to do. I think define ready, like one day I'm like, oh, we got this. Like, let's go. Baby, come today. We're good. Like and then the next day I look at him like, we made a mistake. We can't do this. Are you sure we can be parents? Like, it's just one of those roller coasters, I think. Which is why I'm excited now, because our foundation is so solid that it's almost like natural. You date for a long time. This is our story, but we date for a long time, and then, we're just ready for marriage. Like, that feels like it's the next thing to do. So we do that. And then we felt so confident and comfortable in that position that the next thing felt right, But as far as mentally prepared, I think for me, that fluctuates every day. Like it's always different. So that's how I approach it, is just one day at a time. And I think focusing on the foundation in which you're going to bring a child into the world gives me the confidence to know that no matter what my mood is or how I feel that day, I think when I go back to like the reality of where we're starting from, that always grounds me and makes me feel better that we'll have each other to do it.
Yeah, the way that I think about it is, I think kids, if you're not in the best position possible to have a child already, I think kids put your back against the wall and force you to become ready, better than anything else.
Yeah, I remember that's exactly what you used to say. Like when we first started dating, like not like the first week, but like the first couple, 6, 7, 8 months, whatever. I remember asking him, like, what would you do if we got pregnant? And his immediate response, and he is 4.5 years younger than me. So when I asked that, I was like, really, like, what would you do? Because like you're younger than me and this is scary. It could happen, And his answer was, I'd go to work. I'd get another job. Like that was his verbatim response, and it was immediate. He didn't sit and think about it. He didn't say like, what would I do? I was like, what would you do if I got pregnant? He said, I'd go to work. And I was shocked by that answer, because he was 20 at the time and I was just not expecting that at all. So I think that really speaks to the fact that that's still kind of your mindset around it, is just like, it's a huge responsibility, but he's not afraid to of the task. Like he'll do whatever it takes to make it work. And
yeah, I was talking to Chris yesterday, Chris Cunningham, shout out to ClickUp. And we were talking about having kids, and I said to him, the reason that I went down this personal development journey was because of the thought of having a kid. Just the thought of having the kid put us here. Right.
Well, you had that realization that where you were, if someone gave you all the things you wanted, the house, the marriage, the wife, the child, you couldn't keep it because you didn't have the skills to earn it. So what makes you think if it landed in your lap, you could deserve it, 1, and 2, maintain it. So it's a huge motivator. And I think it makes you look internally as well. Like, who am I? Like, the way I'm acting, if my child acted this way, would I be proud of them? It really makes you get very introspective and look at yourself in a different light, because you now have 2 little eyes looking at you all the time. Even when it comes to our fitness and what we're putting in our mouths and how long we're on these stupid phones, it kind of just opens up a whole new avenue of what you're observing and how you're living your life. And it's not just about you anymore. It's about someone way more important. So it's kind of that's what I mean when I'm excited to take on this new adventure, because it's a totally different part of life. And I'm just really looking forward to doing it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, just the thought of having a kid was motivating to me enough to put myself in a better position, because I knew that at some point that was going to be the case, and I was not in a good position. And again, that was just me thinking about the concept of having a kid. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when the kid's sitting in front of me.
I know.
How much is that going to drive me? So I think, do you need to be mentally prepared to have a kid? I think having a kid, and I'm not saying go and have a kid just because I said this, be responsible. But I think putting yourself in a position where your back is against the wall is only going to, if you're the right kind of person, is only going to mentally prepare you for life. I don't think you use life to become mentally prepared to have a child. I think it can work the other way around, where kids mentally prepare you for life, because now you have somebody that not only you're responsible for, but, you have to ask yourself the questions, like she said, is this how I want my son to act? Is the way I'm acting how I want my son to act? What kind of example am I setting? Am I being a good provider for this child? What kind of life am I, how many people out there have been complete lowlifes, and then they end up having a kid and they become Mr. Family Man. Mm-hmm. Like it happens all the time. And so I wouldn't even know what I would have to do to become mentally prepared to have a child, because like she said, the level of mental readiness changes day by day.
For sure.
Like there are days where I'm like, where I don't want to say mourn, but like, the days where I could just go like, hang out with the boys. Not that I really ever did that, but if I wanted to fly up and go hang out with Kyle for a week, like that's kind of off the table right now. And like, does that make me sad? Rarely, but still I have certain moments where I'm like, well, there are certain things I can't do now. And like,
or at least not as easily. And
right.
And
that kind of sucks.
There's parts of your life that you kind of have to not kiss goodbye, but just you need to adjust. And it's like I have those moments all the time. Like we'll just be, I want to go just sporadically go somewhere or do something, and we just get in the car and do it. We can still do that with the baby, but it's a lot more work. It's a lot more bags. It's a lot more prep, but yeah, it's just that's what mentally preparing. I think it's different for everybody, but it's every day is different. So that's why I think working on your foundation, who you are as a person, and what your aim is, because having a child, it gives you a completely new perspective, because it's not about you anymore. For a lot of people, improving themselves and doing better in life isn't enough to do for themselves, but it's enough to do for somebody else. So when you have two little eyes and this little life that you created, no, I don't want to go do this workout, but I have a little boy who's watching his mom. And I think, watching his mom in a garage sweating, working really hard for 25, 30 minutes is going to serve him leaps and bounds, So I don't know. I think it's mentally preparing for it is kind of, it flip-flops, but I think at the end of the day, it's nothing but a blessing. And I think as long as you take those challenges and aim up with them, I think you really can't go wrong.
Yeah, I think that instead of mentally preparing, the only type of preparation that I would look to do is making sure that if a child were to come into my life, would it be a bad situation for the child? Like that would be the factor that I would consider more than anything else. I think that your own personal readiness is probably never going to get to a point where you're like, I'm ready to have a kid right now, because eventually you're going to have a day where you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And then
it's probably not the best measuring tool to know whether or not you're ready to have kids. I think it's look around you. If there was a little baby in front of you right now, like, is the person you are, the way you live, your environment that you're in, the circle that you operate under or within, are those good conducive things for a baby, for a human? I think if the answer is yes to those things, then, have at it. But I think if you're going to be irresponsible about it is when you have a lot of work to do. And I think bringing a child into the world where you can't even take care of yourself, let alone a tiny human. That's what I'd probably focus on more if you're questioning having kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, mentally preparing is not something that I'd be thinking about, but every other type of preparing I would be. You don't want to set a child up for failure by having a child when you are not capable of taking care of a child, and you're not even capable of taking care of yourself. That is not a good time to have a child. But if you're in a position where you are a good person with good intentions and you're in a financially good position at that point, mental preparedness is in my opinion irrelevant. Like if you're at that stage in life, like I feel like we have an obligation to, reproduce and if the stage is set for that and you're in the position where it's like, okay, a child wouldn't be the worst thing ever, I think that it would probably be a good idea to go for it.
Yeah, and I think that's worth noting too that there are good people out there who don't have great scenarios going on. They, are living in poverty or having a hard time making ends meet, and all of a sudden they find themselves in a scenario where a baby's happening. I think it's often overlooked how much that baby can influence you in the ways that we've been discussing. I have people in my family and in my life who had kids extremely young. We're talking 17, 18 years old, and those babies, they grew up with them, and it was almost like it forced them to just step up and do the right thing and be the person that they ultimately needed to be for themselves. But then it was that driving force they needed to really shape up their lives, and it was a reason for them to do that. So I don't want to paint a picture where if you don't have all your ducks in a row, don't you dare have kids.
No, but we're talking about like somebody who's not in that position accidentally.
Yeah.
Who's trying to decide, when should I start considering this? I think it's a better idea than not to make sure your ducks are in a row.
Yeah.
So
and especially if you're in a relationship, like we were married, and I would really say, like, do you really think we can do that? Like, do you think we'd be? Because I was always way more on the fence about kids than he was. Mostly, I always knew I wanted to have kids, but I was very afraid of it. So I would ask the questions, talk about the scenarios. What would you do if this happened? How do you feel about this? Does this make you nervous? Does this scare you? Like, be transparent and talk about them. Talk about those scenarios, because you're going to face them. So you might as well talk about it. And then the more you talk about it, the more you realize, hopefully, okay, I think we could do this. Like, I think we could really make this work. So then it kind of makes you excited, and it makes your fears lessen, and then you just all of a sudden you're 8 months pregnant and you're bringing a human into the world, and it's nothing but exciting. So
yeah,
I say do it. We need more babies in the world.
We do need more babies in the world. That is a statistical fact.
Yes.
We do need more babies in the world. So if you're in a position to have a baby and you're thinking about it, I say go for it.
Yep.
Question number 4. How many kids are we planning to have?
I always say I like the number 4, but I also, always follow that up with ask me again after 1.
Yeah.
Because, like you could say, you could have this picture perfect image in your mind, and then you have 1 and you're like, just kidding, 2's good. But I love the idea of 4. I only have a brother. He has 2 sisters. So we're kind of in the middle there. But I love the idea of a big family, about a lot of siblings and decent age ranges, and I like that idea. But again, you never know.
I say minimum 2, maximum 5.
Yeah, that's a comfortable.
That's probably where I sit, because I want, he needs to have a sibling, both for our sake and for his.
Yes.
And he like a starting 5 for a basketball team wouldn't suck either.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, between 2 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all we need to say for that question.
Yep.
Okay. Question number 5. How will we make time for our relationship?
90 minutes a week per Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. Well, so we do this thing that we've been doing for
a while now.
We've
been good at it. We've had to have a decent streak going.
Yep. So what we do every Sunday is we go to church at 8 a.m. every single Sunday. And then afterwards we go to the cafe. Would you consider it a cafe?
Yeah.
Yeah. The cafe that is right around the block, quarter of a mile down the street. And we spend maybe an hour to 90 minutes there eating our hot honey breakfast sandwiches, which are incredible. And we discuss what's going on for the week. We talk about things we have planned, things we want to do, things that we have to think about, things that we have to discuss. How are you doing? How am I doing? Stuff like that. And it ensures that we're always on the same page about what's going on in our relationship and what's going on in our life. And so that's not going anywhere. Obviously, he'll be coming with us, but that time is extremely important, because otherwise, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's important, but it's also extremely intentional. Like it's, it's the weekend. So we always have friends and family over all the time. As soon as Friday night hits, it's like, who's coming over? What are we getting for takeout, whatever. And Sunday mornings is very intentional for us. Like we specifically go to church and we specifically have our date. We tell people they can come meet us if they want, but like this is the time that we set aside every single week. And I think a lot of couples miss that. I think they think, well, I don't have the time or we have this much, but you have to prioritize it. And the reason is because if you don't have these serious conversations, and it doesn't have to be serious conversations, but if you don't talk about the dynamics of your life and your relationship and your household, you miss the fun. Because when you try to have fun, the serious stuff's going to pop up, and you got to handle that stuff first before you can have play and you can actually have a good time together as a couple. So we're extremely intentional about that time. It will get harder with our son here. I think, hope if he's having a bad morning, if we can't make it to church, if we're late, if we don't have the time, you never know what's going to happen, but we're very intentional about it. And we know how important it is and how much it's served us since we started doing it. So I think even if Sunday mornings for some reason don't happen for whatever, like what I just mentioned, we'll still make it a point, even if it's just coming in here and shutting the door for an hour, and just talking on the couch or sitting outside by the pool and just making sure that we have those conversations, because it's just so important. And we'll talk about anything from like family drama to like work to what are we doing for the holidays to, this really bothered me the other day or whatever the case. And it's just a really great time to just be with your person and unwind and just talk about the things that you need to talk about, because life gets hectic. And as we start adding more kids into the mix, it's going to get even more hectic and they're going to demand more of your time. So starting that habit now is really important. And I really will definitely do whatever it takes to make sure that we carry it into the future.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a non-negotiable in our life. The 90 minutes a week at the cafe. I will not dox our location, but
although I'm sure they'd appreciate a shout out, but maybe one day.
But I think of running a marriage or a household or a relationship very much like running a business. And I don't think you would go, months on end without having a meeting and talking about what needs to get talked about, and checking in on where the business is at and making sure that the owners of that business or the leaders of that business are on the same page about what's going on. And if you do that, it allows for the purest form of just like execution. You can just focus on doing what you need to do, and there's no underlying tension. There's no underlying things that need to get talked about. There's no little problems that have been swept under the rug that she's secretly mad at me about, or we're resentful for each other, resentful to each other about anything. It's just that 90 minutes a week to air it out. And we very rarely have problems. And I think this is largely a part of that. But when you solve problems before they become problems, you don't tend to have very many problems. And I think where a lot of couples struggle is that they don't talk about things. They don't address things.
Sweep them under the rug.
And most importantly, they don't humble themselves to their partner. Mm-hmm. It's always me versus you versus me. You said this, I said that. When we sit down and we have a problem, the question is, okay, what's the problem? Not what's your problem or what's my problem. What's the problem? Right? It's as if we're sitting here and this is my mouse, right? Our mouse is the problem. We're sitting here staring at the problem, being like, how do we get this to go away? Mm-hmm. Right? What's your understanding?
Not you did this to get this here, and we approach it as a team. We're not looking to win. We're not looking to, outsmart the other person. It's like we have this problem here. Like, how are we going to address it? And I think it's really important to approach things that way. I think that's how marriages work. You have to be a team with everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it.
Yeah. We always separate whatever problems we have with each other as their own entity. Just like we separate our marriage as its own entity. There's you and there's me. And we are the founders and executives of this marriage. And we care about this marriage and we want to keep this marriage going. We want this marriage to be as fruitful and thrive and be successful. And that's what we want to do with this marriage. And so what we have to do is agree that that's what we want to do, and make sure that when something gets in the way of that happening, we are on the same page that we want that thing to be removed so that we can go back to thriving and going back to succeeding within our marriage. That is a separate entity, that is not her or me, right? And that to me is the approach that has allowed us to have so few problems, and when we do have problems, solve them
almost instantly. Yeah, we rarely ever have problems. But when we do, it's like in the moment right now. Like we're figuring it out. We're not carrying this with us. We might need some time to like breathe for a second if it's something that's really heavy, but it very rarely follows the next day ever. And I think a point that really triggered this intentional time for us too is there's a hierarchy that we're operating under, and it's God, marriage, children. Like that's the order in which we operate. So if you think that you can, have a strong faith in God or whatever it is that you believe in, and skip the marriage portion and have a mess between the two of you and think that you're going to raise a happy, healthy family, usually doesn't work out that way. So we know that like if our foundation between the two of us isn't solid and strong and confident, then the chances of us raising kids underneath that marriage or through that marriage successfully is very unlikely. So that's a huge point of it too, is we know that our future kids can't have the best life possible if mom and dad can't see eye to eye on essentially anything. So we know we're not going to ever let that slip, because it's incredibly important. It's just like a business. If your COO or CEO isn't doing their job, what makes you think the people underneath them are going to be able to function well too? So it's truly as simple as just a hierarchy, and you have to maintain that order. And you have to know the priority in which to do that. So we know how important it is to keep a healthy, honest, open, intentional marriage.
Yeah. And I think and
I want our kids to see that. Like, I want our kids to see, like, oh, mom and dad this is what they do. Like, they spend time. And I think that's really important to let them see the work it takes, not just, oh, our parents were soulmates and they just had this whimsical relationship. Like, I want them to see that it was work and it was intentional, and we worked really hard to show them that, and that they can too have those things if they're willing to work for it.
Yep, exactly. So how will we make time for our relationship? Well, we understand that it is the most important thing, because what is the most common reason that and I'm not speculating here. I generally know like what the statistics point to, but I can't name numbers right now. But like, what is the most common denominator between people that are in prison? Broken homes.
Yeah.
Parents that are not together. Parents that don't love each other.
50% divorce rate. It's just,
right.
You don't want to contribute to that. So you want to do everything you can to not. And I think to answer the question bluntly, it's like, how will we prioritize time? Like, we just will. Like,
it's
just like you brush your teeth, just like you make sure your kids get to school on time, just like you prioritize their doctor, you just make it a priority. Like, that's just the way it is. Right. It's a decision. Some weeks are easier than others. Even if we have to stay up later and our eyes are crossing because we're so tired, like, you just have to put in the work. And if for some reason like a weekend ago we couldn't do our date, but like, we still prioritize that time. So it's really a non-negotiable for us.
You came up here yesterday, or no, we were outside.
That's right.
We were outside having lunch. That's when we decided to do it. Like, that is sacred to us. That time to make sure that we're continuing to be on the same page, and that there's nothing that we're not talking about, and that we're both moving in the same direction. That is the most important thing that we do in our marriage. Right. And most people will think it's going on a date or having lots of sex. And it's like, hey, buddy, if you sit down and make sure that you guys are on the same page, more of those things are going to happen.
Exactly.
Just saying.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Non-negotiable.
Like,
no, it doesn't matter if we have 2 kids or 5.
That's part of our parenting strategy. Mm-hmm. It's taking that time to have an intentional marriage and show them what a good marriage looks like is part of our parenting strategy. Mm-hmm. It is just as important as feeding them food.
Right. I remember, I can't remember who it was, but someone on Instagram and the Reels or something was saying how, their kids were raised knowing like, mommy and daddy just got home from work. It's adult time. So you guys go play and mommy and daddy are going to be in the kitchen and they're going to have some time before dinner to talk. Like, and that was just, they were like, okay. And that was very normal in their house. Like that was just the way that it was. It was adult time or whatever he called it. So I think again, teaching your kids that it's a skill, it's a habit. It's something that you have to practice and work. I don't think marriages they're not just these soulmate fantasy Nicholas Sparks novel things. Some are, but the good ones take a lot of work. And I think showing your kids is an even greater gift.
And I think when you do the work, it looks and feels a lot more like a Nicholas Sparks novel than if you don't.
Yeah, it's so true.
Cool. Question number 6. How did you know that you wanted to raise a child with your spouse? We didn't have any other choice, right? We're together. Here we are.
Kind of made a commitment here.
Well, I think one thing that I've always thought about, and this hasn't not been an intentional thing. It's just something that I have thought about over time. And it's not like I sat there and had the moment of like, let me check to make sure that you check my boxes for having a family. Because when we first started dating, we weren't super sure whether or not we wanted to have kids until maybe 2021, until I realized the population was declining and that the reason that Western civilization is failing is because of a lack of families. Until that moment, we were kind of 50-50 on whether or not we wanted to have kids.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think made you a really good candidate to be the mother of my children is the fact that we're very compatible. I want to do the things that you don't want to do. I don't want to do the things that you want to do. And we just work in tandem really, really well. And you don't mind staying home with the kids and doing all that and cleaning and organizing and cooking and doing and all the stuff that I hate doing. And I will deal and I'll make sure you never have to think about what our taxes are going to be. And like that's just the way our relationship works. And I think that when you have very defined roles like that, it just makes for a very smooth operation. We're not competing with each other. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to like see who has more authority. It's just like we have this understanding of like, this is how things work. We both like how it works. And so plugging a kid into that seems like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like I don't recall ever having this epiphany like, oh my God, I want his babies. Like it's more or less like, I think it all happened once we both started like cleaning up our lives. Like I think I remember a profound moment that I do remember is you were making a bunch of notes, and I remember seeing one where you said, it was when you had that kind of epiphany where you were like, I want to start acting in a way that I would want my future son to act. And that when I realized he made that realization, I was like, that's a good person to build a life with and create children with, because that's such a good aim. So as soon as he started cleaning up his life and who he was and the man he wanted to be and started acting in such a way that he was aiming for these things, I thought, well, I would love to raise a family with someone like that. And then as soon as we started having more conversations and where we want to go in life, our goals and where we want to go and how we're going to get there, it just felt like, well, duh, why wouldn't you bring kids? It almost felt like it would be a waste to have such a beautiful life that we want to build and aim towards all these amazing things and not create life and bring tiny humans into the picture and bring them with us. So,
yeah, I think when we first started dating, it was very much like, I don't know, maybe. And then, as soon as the more we started having the conversations and things started moving towards where they are now, like it got to a point where like, I feel stupid for not doing this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But obviously, like given our situation, it probably would have been
irresponsible. Wouldn't have worked out 5 years ago, but
it probably would have been irresponsible to have had children given where I was 5 years ago. But with all that being said, it does make you kick yourself because you're like, knowing how important it is, to bring children into the world and knowing how important it is to be the example of a good family and what that does for society. Like it makes me wish that obviously I didn't go through any of the nonsense that I went through 5 years ago, but it
got us here.
Right.
And that's why you work so hard on what you do now, is because you want to help people get there faster than you did. I mean, we could have, I don't want to say we wasted time because our time was our story and that's what was meant for us. But, if we can show a 19-year-old kid this stuff 5 years sooner than he learned it, awesome. I think the sooner you can get to a point in life where you're ready for the big things that matter, which in my opinion are
Yeah, I would love to.
Children and
I would love
family.
to.
Sorry. Go
You
ahead.
keep interrupting me.
Well, you interrupted me. I didn't finish my
Do we
sentence.
need to have a meeting about this? Okay. I would love to see younger people start to have more kids sooner, like in their early 20s. And a lot of people will probably hear that and be like, oh, kids aren't ready in their early 20s. It's like, well, 50 years ago they were. 50 years ago, a 21-year-old was much more competent and much more capable than a 35-year-old today.
Yeah.
And so if we can get back there to where, people are positioned, I would never want an irresponsible person, no matter how old they are, to have a child. I would not want somebody who is unable to take care of themselves to have a child. My statement presupposes that younger people, ages 20 to 25, are taking care of themselves and putting themselves in a better position and working to be the best man or woman that they possibly can be. That has to happen first before we start pumping out babies. But I think in the best version of society, our 20 to 25-year-olds are some of our most capable human beings that we have in the world. And they're the ones facilitating, families and having children. I think that's what the best version of society looks like. So I don't think age is a good metric to judge whether or not you should have a kid, unless you're in your mid to late 30s and you can't have kids anymore. Like, that's where age really starts to matter. But really what matters is preparedness and competence. And like, we have an issue with that regardless of age. I know people in their 40s that aren't taking care of themselves. And so, if you sit there and say, oh, we don't want people have to live their life and whether, well, it doesn't seem to be going too well. People have been finding themselves for decades now, and it just seems to end up in a whole bunch of regret. So anyway, what was the question? How did you want to know? Yeah, because we like each other. Cool.
Yeah.
Question number 7. Question number 7. What values will you instill in your child that you were not taught?
Ooh.
I'll take this one.
Yeah.
One thing that I was not taught, I was taught a lot of the right values. I was taught what to believe. And I stand by those values today. Here I am, 10 years later since I started to abandon those values. And I wish I never had abandoned those values. But the only reason that I abandoned those values was because I was never taught why I should have those values. I was just taught that I should have those values. And that's not good enough for me. And I don't know if I talked about this in a previous podcast, but I was very religious growing up, grew up in a very religious family. And I was just told, you got to go to church. You got to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. And I'm like, why? Why? Well, because you just can't. And I'm like, well, that's not good. That's not good enough for me. I need to know why. Like, it has to make sense to me in my brain. And then I went down the road of doing all the things that I was told I couldn't do and not doing all the things that I was told that I needed to do. And it ended me up in a really, really, really bad place where I didn't want to be, and I hated myself and I hated my life. So I figured out at that moment why I should have believed what my parents taught me growing up. So one thing a rule that I'm making with our kid is that if he asks me the question why, I have to give him a good answer. And if I don't have a good answer, then that's a problem with me. I have to figure out why so I can communicate it to him. He needs to know why just as much as I need to know why. My least favorite thing that parents say is because I said so. And I imagine there's going to be scenarios where sometimes you just got to lay your foot down and say, because I'm the parent and you're the kid. And a lot of the reason why you have to do that sometimes is because the kid can't comprehend why, and you explaining it to him doesn't make it any better. And so in moments like that, you just have to do it. But I think that parents don't understand why they instill certain things in their child. And so they just use, because I'm the parent, because I said so, they spam that button over and over again. And their kid never actually is able to understand themselves or understand how the world works. And that was a problem with me. I was just told, this is the way it is. And I'm like, well, there are other people not doing that. And so like, it can't just be the way it is. And then you experience some life and you're like, oh, that kind of is the way it is. And so I don't know. I just want to be able to explain to our son, I almost said his name, but that's for unplugged. I want to be able to explain to him why we believe as a family what we believe, and give him good reasons that he can understand. And if he can't understand them, well, I'll try to dumb it down some more. But I just don't want to rob my kid of that opportunity, because it'll avoid a lot of mistakes if he can know what to believe and why to believe it. And he's confident in that. And so that when the world or his friends or whatever pulls him in another direction, he can double down on the fact that, no, this is what I believe. This is why I should believe it. And so I'm not going to go do the things that you guys want to do and not have the same regrets and make the same mistakes that you guys are making. And so that to me is super important. And so if he asks why, I'm telling him why.
I think that's a good approach to parenthood.
What's yours?
I don't know. This is tough for me because I was taught a lot of good things growing up. I had amazing parents, really good people. But something that I didn't understand, whether or not I wasn't taught it, I don't exactly know. But one thing I didn't understand growing up was how, that just because you're good at, hard work is what gets you to where you want to be and gets you the results that you're looking for. So for an example, I was a dancer my whole life, a competitive dancer, and I was really good at it. But I had this really weird insecurity because I was one of those dancers where, my dance teacher would say, okay, try this. And I'd try it. And on the first try, I'd get it. And a lot of people had to work really hard to do that particular thing. Whereas a lot of the time for me, 1 or 2 tries, I'd do a pretty dang good job, and it just came really naturally to me. So with that came an insecurity because it almost felt like I didn't deserve the awards that I won or the accomplishments that I had. Even when, judges would bring me on stage and pull me aside and in front of thousands of people and call me out on how beautiful whatever was, I just always had this feeling inside oh, that was just luck, or they liked my costume, or they loved the song I chose, or I would justify my success with something that it wasn't the reason I did well. I did well because I was good at what I was doing. But I wanna teach my kids that they're in control and their intent, hard work is incredibly important, and you can achieve whatever you want in life if you're willing to put in the work. Some things might come easier, some things might come a little bit more difficult. But I think that you're in control of that, where I felt like I was just lucky. I never really, and not a single person in my life ever said, Shani, you could have done this better, or, you really didn't do that great at this performance, or you really could work harder at this. Not a single person ever said that to me. I just had this weird insecurity that I wasn't deserving of the things that I had because I didn't have to work really hard at them. And that sounds like I was lazy, but things just came very easily to me in certain realms of life. So I think if I understood that hard work is what gets you to those things and those accomplishments, I'd have worked harder and done even better. I would have pushed myself more and understood, okay, that triple pirouette came really easily to me. Let's go for 4 or 5. Oh, the 5 came hard. Well, let's work on 5 and let's tighten your core and look up ways to do it better and ask your dance teacher this and really push myself, because I was always afraid to push that envelope because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to do it. And if I couldn't do it, then I sucked. And I didn't understand that, you can't do it because you haven't tried hard enough yet. You haven't put the work in yet. So I guess, I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but I think I just really want my kids to understand the true, honest connection of hard work and grit to get them whatever they want in life, and that not to ever shortchange themselves and rely on luck or, whatever you think a circumstance is.
I have 3 points on that. Because I find this interesting, because my aunt and I were just having this conversation a few days ago talking about golf, and she and I are very similar in the sense of we learn extremely quickly, and it doesn't take us as much time as it does for other people to learn certain things, most things, right? You're talking about how you were naturally gifted at, specific things. But when it comes to math, right?
Numbers.
Right. So when it comes to math, you have certain things that you just don't do.
And that's the point, is I just thought I was stupid. Math didn't come easily to me, so I thought I was dumb. I just thought, well, my brain can't do that, so that's just the way I am. I'll be in all honors classes and I'll be in the lowest grade math because my brain just doesn't know how to do it. But had I understood, you just need to work harder at it. You just need to study extra hard. You just need to, you don't understand, your brain doesn't learn things this way. So you need to kind of word it in this way, and then it'll start to click and you'll get it. So because I didn't understand that correlation of hard work and just understanding how you learn and the input and the output of all that, I think it would have served me so much better. I would have had more confidence to learn the things that I struggled with and to push myself harder versus, I don't know how to do that, and it's just the way my brain is, and I just get by with what I can do, So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that just made me that just made my point clear.
Well, and you didn't pursue anything past the point where, as soon as you've always gravitated towards the things that you want to do and that you excel at, right? Which is a totally normal thing, by the way. You want to organize, you want to clean, you want if that could be your entire life, you'd be happy with it, And
Probably.
but if it was to, call you have to
insurance company and figure out why this bill went through, forget it. I'm not doing it. I'll just eat the money. It is what it is. My brain just goes in complete overdrive. Yeah.
You don't have that. You don't have the thing that I have.
No.
Which is
the more you don't understand something, the more fire he has to just figure it out. It's a challenge for him. Even as something like a Disney freaking fast passes, it's harder to get them, the more he wants to try to get them. Me, I'm I'm not interested in going through all the stress and the chaos of that. Have at it. It's just, I think that mindset serves you so much better in life.
But I think the combination of both is where you really reach your potential. And this is what I was talking to Auntie Wendy about, because she excels at golf and she just picks things up, and she says, because she's like, Brett doesn't spend as much time, Brett will spend all day at the driving range, hitting ball after ball after ball after ball, practicing chipping, practicing putting. He will practice and practice and practice and practice. And he says to her, he goes, you need to practice more. And she's like, but I don't. I don't. But I said to her, I'm like, but what if you did?
Right.
But what if you did practice as hard as he does with your talent?
Exactly.
Imagine how good you would be if you did that.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. The combination of both is where you can really reach your potential, because like you said, imagine if you had taken imagine if you had my work ethic and your dance ability.
I kick myself for it all the time. I think back to had I just pushed harder or had the confidence or just went for that extra, trick or routine or whatever. But I can just remember, and this is turning into a weird Shanna therapy session, so we're going to cut this in a second, but I can remember my very first time doing a duet or a trio. I was or solo especially. I always did group dances. And then when I turned 12 or 13, my dance teacher really wanted me to partner up with this girl to do a duo. And I was like, just the two of us? I was like, I'm not doing that. That's so stressful. I've never done that before. That's just the two of us on stage. And the thought of it was absolutely not. But my dance teachers were so adamant because they knew how good we were and how amazing we'd be. And my parents too, they're like, you should do it. You should do it. They really want you to. And I would get so stressed out and almost angry. I would feel like I was getting cornered, because anytime someone was telling me about my potential and how good I could be at something, it would stress me out. Because I'm like, well, I didn't have that confidence. That was you're right. I work really hard at this and I put in all this time and I can do this. Let's go. And, I'd technically be forced into these scenarios, and we'd kill it every single time. Our stuff would always be the best of the best. And it was never a failure on my part, but because I lacked that confidence and that desire to push for the next level, it definitely was a disservice to me. I didn't understand the connection, and whether or not I wasn't taught it or I just didn't believe it, I don't really know. Looking back, I don't really know the answer to that, but I definitely want my kids to understand that work ethic and that determination and grit will get you anything you want in life.
Yeah. I want our son to have the same, I always say it like this, almost irresponsible level of self-belief that I have. And if he's naturally inclined towards something or he's naturally gifted at something, to take that belief and that work ethic and just go. Yeah. Because that's how you become the best in the world at something. Mm-hmm.
The relentlessness of it is definitely something that I get overwhelmed and I just,
Yeah.
So that I hope to teach.
So those are the things that we want to instill in our son that we were not taught. Question number 8. Do you have any fear or guilt about raising a child in the current society? And if so, how do you deal with it?
I'll let you take this one.
No, absolutely not. Do I have guilt about the world that he's going to grow up in? No. I think that that's how we fix the world. I think that, as I alluded to in my short little sentence a few minutes ago, like, I think the reason that the world is the way it is because we're not taking as much responsibility as we need to be to fix it. And part of that is raising kids. I think that if you want to put a nail in the coffin and say, well, the world is definitely fucked, the way to do that is to let all the worst people in the world have the kids and we don't have any. I think that if you want to not guarantee that the world goes to shit, you have to put good people in it. And so absolutely do not have a shred of guilt or a shred of worry about the world he's going to grow up in. Do I worry about like what's going to happen in the world and like, is the power grid going to get shut down and we're going to have to figure something out? Like, yes, that's something that I think about a lot. And like, what would we do in that scenario? But do I feel guilty that I'm bringing a kid into this world? I think that is part of the solution, which is why I'm so hell-bent on having a bunch of kids, because that's part of it. Like, we have to raise the next generation. If we don't raise the next generation of good people that do good things that make the world better, all that's going to be left are the people who don't give a shit. All the people who only want to serve themselves. All the people who think that they're entitled to everything. All the people who are lazy. All the people who say, you do this for me and I do nothing in return. Like, that's what the world's going to be run by. That's going to be the bar. That's going to be the standard. And unless we have children and change that, the world will go to shit and the world will be worse. And I think the people that don't have kids, that could have kids, I'm not saying every single person that could have kids, can have kids, should have kids. I think that there are certain people in the world who play a much bigger role than having kids. But I think most people who say, oh, I don't want kids, they're probably the type of people that should have kids. And yeah, that's my rant about that. But yeah, no guilt, no nothing. I think that not everyone is called to have kids. I think that,
it's not the only solution, but I think it's a disservice to not put good. I mean, and I think people have this doom and gloom view of it. Like, oh, how could you ever bring a child into this world? It's like if you really zoom out and look at like each generation, like we all have to pay a price for the generation's decisions before us. Like, that's just the way that the world works. I mean, even in a family setting, we're all just a product of our parents' successes and failures, and we hope to do it better when it's our turn. You know what I mean? So I think it's kind of a doomy and gloomy way to look at it. I think every generation is going to have their struggle. And I mean, look at the generations before us. I mean, all the world wars and all the horrific things that have happened, like it's just a product of life, unfortunately. And unless we have the good people of the world start creating humans and putting good people back into the earth to make better decisions, to take on these roles that we've royally screwed up and try to do better and learn from our mistakes, like what's the point of any of it then? If you're not going to try to pass the torch and like to make our kids' lives better so that they can do better than we did, like what's the point? Like, why don't we just all, it's a wrap. Like, why don't we just, shut the lights now, like, or the curtain now? It's kind of a bleak mentality to have. So, but like you said, I mean, there's certainly fears of the future. You can name 100 of them right now. It's like, there's those for sure. That's a scary thought. Like, so many things could happen in the instability of what we're going through right now. And it's an incredibly interesting time to be living through. But no, I think it's a huge disservice to not put good people back into the world and try to make it as best as the best place that we can. Yeah.
So I think in closing, I would say when somebody would say to us, how could you bring kids into this messed up world? My answer would be, because I'm trying to make it better. We're trying to make it better. We're trying to put good people in the world so it can be less messed up. And all you're doing is sitting on your hands, waiting for somebody else to solve the problem. That's what you're doing. Right? So we're going to be out here having kids, trying to make the next generation better than we are so that we can live in a better world, so that they can live in a better world. And my great, great, great grandchildren can thank us for having our son who had their grandfather or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's the future that I'm building towards. And you know what? I don't think we're going to regret it whatsoever.
No. I don't think so at all. That's not to say we're just going to sit back and have kids that they can handle the problems. It's like, no, of course, we're going to do everything we can to make life better for our kids specifically, but then their generation. And then you just pass the torch. That's what you do. That's how generations work. That's how the world keeps spinning, you know, to not put good people back into it is just a kind of a bizarre mentality and very illogical in my brain.
Yeah. I think
I don't have any
and I don't
guilt.
want to, because I know there are going to be people listening to this who don't have kids or are having kids, and a lot of them we know personally who are going to get offended by what I just said. But at the end of the day, I would be the most ridiculous person to sit here and say every single person should have kids. Like, obviously there are people that should not have kids. There are people that can't have kids. And you know what? We don't need everyone to have kids, but we need more than we have right now. So if you are on the fence, if you're not one of these, you know, hard ass, I'm never having kids people, like, think about it. Seriously think about it. And think about the fact that you have an opportunity to make the world better just by instilling your beliefs into the next generation. You know, and by the way, in whatever capacity. Like, I have a fantastic aunt who's never going to have kids, never wanted kids, but she played just as much of a role in my life as anybody else. And so the important thing that I'm trying to get at is maybe you don't have to create the kids. The point is looking at the next generation and being like, how do we fix their values? How do we point them in the right direction? And a lot of that is going to mean having kids. But there are some people who play that role in other kids' lives. And as long as that's happening in some way, shape, or form, and the next generation is not being taught this religion of pride and self-service and I do whatever I want and life is about me. Like, as long as that's not being passed down to the next generation, cool. Don't have kids, but don't discourage other people from having kids, and don't tell people that they're wrong for having kids or that it's selfish to have kids or that how could you bring kids into this world? They're doing more than you are. So,
yeah, I think the overall message is whether you can have kids or you don't want kids, I think the correct approach is contributing positively to the next generation. Whether you're actually having children physically yourself or you're an incredible aunt who's like a parent figure to said children. I think nourishing and feeding and growing up our next generation collectively, no matter what role you have specifically, should be the common goal. Not having them and not putting our resources into nourishing that generation is just a logic that just doesn't pan out for me. I don't understand. That road seems scary. It seems like post-apocalyptic almost. So I think the message here is to nourish and contribute to the next generation in any way that you feel you can and that you feel is best for you.
Yep. So that's our answer on that. Last question.
Last one.
Question number 10. What is your plan on how to raise your kid to not be like the rest of their generation?
Well, I think the simple answer is identify the problems of the current generation and do the opposite.
Right. So if you don't want your kids to end up like the rest of the generation of their generation, don't do the same things that those parents are doing. It's just like if you don't want the same outcomes as your friends, well, look at what they're doing and then don't do that.
Right.
And so, you know, when we see parents you might have noticed the thumbnail of this podcast if you're watching on YouTube, when we see parents with their 3-year-old kid with headphones on in the restaurant, and they got an iPad in front of him just so the kid won't lose their shit. It's like, okay, well, we're not going to do that. Even if it means we don't go out, and it means that, okay, our son's acting up. He's not up for it tonight. We're gonna eat in. We're gonna order takeout. We're gonna do something different. Like we will do that before we throw an iPad in our kid's face and say, "Shut up."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard, and I think we live in a world where those distractions and those soothing mechanisms, whether it's, you know, an iPad, a phone, whatever, I think it's easier for the parents. I think it serves the parents in that moment. The parents can have a break at dinner and just put the headphones on the kids and they can have an hour of peace and quiet. I think it ultimately disservices the kids. I think when I remember watching I just couldn't believe it. Like the parents sat down and this was them the whole time. And then they had maybe a 9 and a 13-year-old at the dinner table with them. And they had their headphones in, they had their iPads, and the kids didn't even make eye contact with the waiter. They just sat there. They were old enough to order their food or tell mom and dad what they wanted. Mom and dad ordered all their food for them, and the kids never looked up from their iPads the whole time. And I just remember thinking how heartbreaking that. And listen, you don't know people's scenarios, you don't know what's going on, you don't know the details. I'm not making prejudgments, but I just remember thinking like, is this the direction in which our culture and our society is going? Because to me, I just think a lot of these things are serving the parents, and they are more so than they are the kids. So in my mind, it's like, well, if my kids don't ever have access to an iPad in the car or at the dinner table, then they're not going to know that it's a distraction or something that will soothe them. So why give it to them at all? Like just kind of skip over that. And that's going to be hard for us too, because we're on our phones a lot. We like to have the TV on. We like to do all these certain things that we're going to need to stop doing because, monkey see, you can't be a hypocrite. You can't tell your kids they can't be on their iPads while you're scrolling on your phone for the last 35 minutes. So, I think it's certainly going to be hard to go down that road. Kind of circling back to what we were answering in the beginning of the podcast about, how we're going to choose to parent our kids. And it's going to go against the norm. Like there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to do that other people are going to be like, seriously, did you hear that Matt and Shayna want? And you know what? That's okay. Like I'd rather those comments and live with those than the alternative, which would be just giving into what's easier.
Raising a brat.
Right. Exactly. So I think looking around and seeing all the flaws and the mistakes that parents make now, and we're going to do them too. We're not going to be perfect. We're not saying that we're just going to, do things better than everybody, but there are certainly observations that you make that you understand, oh, like kids act like this now because this is how we raised them. Like maybe we won't do that this time. Like I think we'll take a different approach, which will be really hard. It's going to be, especially as they get older, because, you can keep a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old away from a phone, but when they turn 15, it's going to get harder, so it's those challenges I'm willing to take on because they're worth it. I think a lot of the times, back to the point I was trying to make, is in this culture, there's so much that we just want to simplify everything. We just want to make things easy, as easily as and as simple as we can. But I think sorry, my watch is talking to me. We just want to make things as simple and as easy as we can. And then at what cost? So that's kind of something that I always want to think about. I would rather my 7-year-old kid be able to look at a waiter in the eye and say, I want chicken fingers, than sit there with their headphones and looking at their iPad and not being a contributing member of society. So I think that's going to always be our approach. Yeah.
I think that when you look at the kids when I mean kids, I mean like 16, 17, 18, 19, when you look at these adults today, teenagers, whatever, when you look at them today, you can just see the consequences of the decisions that their parents made. You can see that their parents raised them as if they were just like dealing with a child instead of building a person. And that's an approach that we are intentionally taking with our son, is that we are not just enjoying a child or playing with a child or raising a child. We are building a man. Like he is going to be a man so much longer than he's going to be a boy. And so we have to do what is best for the man that is our son and not the boy that is our son. And so like she said, I'd rather put ourselves in a position where our son looks the waiter in the eye and is able to order his food, and say exactly what he wants, than us having to do it for him, which means it's going to inconvenience us. It means that we're going to have to say, hey, insert name here that you can look at, that you can hear if you join Matt Graham Unplugged. Hey, son, you got to do this. You got to do this. And it's just going to inconvenience us a lot more. And we're going to have to do a lot of the work up front. But it's suffer now or suffer later, just like everything else. So you can either suffer now and make your life extremely inconvenient, but get the reward on the back end when you raise somebody that is exactly maybe not exactly who you want them to be, but miles closer to where you prefer them to be than some of these other kids that you see walking around the world acting entitled and not knowing how to do anything, not knowing how to look people in the eye or shake a hand or have a conversation or order their food. I just saw like a 20-something-year-old at Chipotle or whatever, and their mother was ordering their burrito. It's like the kid was fully capable. The kid was, whatever, talking on the phone, having conversations with somebody, and the mother was ordering the food. What do you want? What do you want? It's like, have the kid order it. Yes, it might take a little bit longer. Yes, he might have to think about it. Yes, you're going to get out there a little, slower than you would otherwise. But at the end of the day, you are building an adult. You are building a person. And so you cannot think about what is most expedient in the moment. You have to think about what are the consequences or what is the long-term outcome of me doing this thing. And so that's what we will be constantly thinking about. I'm sure a very common phrase in our household will be, who are we building? What kind of man are we building with this?
Now or later. We deal with the pain now or deal with it when he's 25 and awkward, And
I think so, I always like to get to the root cause of issues with everything. So I look at the world and I see these kids and I'm like, what is the root? Like, why are they all kind of ending up similar? Why are they all kind of unable to look each other in the eye and have these and I really think, like she said, it is because the parents want to do what is most convenient to them in the moment. And I get it. Life is hard. Life is stressful. It's hard to balance all these things. But at the end of the day, the rest of your life is going to be so much easier if you just do the work up front now and deal with the inconvenience now. It's going to be so much more convenient later when you're not having to order your kids food or call to get them an oil change or show them how to change a tire when they're 40. So
yeah. I think it'll be hard because it won't be hard in the sense for us because we'll understand the bigger picture. It'll be hard as they get older and other people come into their lives and they, even if friends or family don't agree agree is a strong word. It's not their place to agree. It's not their child until they're 18. They don't really have a say. But I think it'll be harder as they get older and stuff like that. But I think you just do your kids a major disservice when you don't put in that extra work. And you just, like Matt said, you have to think of it as you're raising a future adult that's going to contribute to society. And what kind of adult do you want them to be? And you got to do whatever it takes to get them there. That's the sacrifice. But I think that's kind of the fun of it too. I think it's, you gotta, if you don't put in the work in something like this, then I don't know, it's a no-brainer to me. It's going to be hard. And that's kind of what I was saying in the beginning. I know myself and I'm going to have to slow down immensely to do those things I follow a first form athlete. Her name's Laura Novotny, and she's an amazing mom. And she's so good at slowing her day down and letting her 2-year-old help. Her 2-year-old little girl can make her own eggs. She stands up by the stove with her little, the little toddler stool thing that goes against the counter, and Laura's there the whole time watching her. And she's 2 years old, and she can flip her own omelet. And she can make her own eggs, all because Laura spent so much time, spending the mornings with Mia and showing her how to crack an egg and letting her make a mess and having the egg fall in between the grates and into the oven and causing an enormous mess. And, she just had the patience to slow down and teach her kids, how to contribute, whether it's something as little as making their eggs for breakfast or making Laura's protein coffee in the morning. Mia will learn how to press the espresso machine, and she watches it and she feels so happy because she helps mom make her coffee. And even though she spilled half the scoop of protein all over the counter and wasted $6.27 worth of quality you just have to kind of change your mindset and think, I could have done this a lot faster 20 minutes ago, or think of the lessons that this is teaching my kid right now. That's the difference to me. It's I will sacrifice 20 minutes all day long if I can give my kids the confidence and the skill set to do simple things in life that will just only exponentially grow from there. So That's kind of the mindset I hope to always have, or at least have, but likely need to be reminded of quite often.
And think about the butterfly effect of just doing that. It's now for that little girl, contributing becomes the norm. Doing something herself becomes the norm. Trying things and failing becomes the norm. And as she starts to develop further, the weight of of teaching her stuff, the weight of having to slow her day down, the weight of instilling these things into this kid is going to be diminished slowly over time. Whereas you have these parents who just throw the iPad in front while they make the eggs, like their kid does not, their kid develops physically, but that doesn't make their parents' life any easier. When they're 20 years old or they're 4 years old, they're still doing the same thing. Throw the iPad in front and I'll make the eggs. Nothing changes. Versus by the time that kid's 12, the kid will be making breakfast for the whole family and you get to sit there. It's like, what deal do you want? Which version of reality do you want? Do you want the one where you put the work in first and then it starts to pay off, or the one where you're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and nothing changes and nobody gets better?
Yeah. And I think that ties in a lot too. I think something with our generation, people, things are very high stress right now, and it's hard to get by, and we can talk politics and the whole nine and all that. But I think it's robbed us of the ability to slow down. I think because people are so in a rush to get to the next place and get to work and get the kids off in time or whatever the case may be. So I think a lot of it's mindset too. A lot of it is, you have to really train yourself to slow down and look at what these moments are teaching your kids. And I think we've been robbed of that with the kind of society that we live in now. So I don't want to sit here and preach and say these parents need to just take a chill pill. It is so enormously stressful, especially when you have multiple kids and there's so much going on. But I wish and hope that people can start to slow down a little bit and just take in all these moments. And because I like what Alex Hormozi said. He said, when you're in the thick of it and you're putting your kids down for bed and, you're exhausted and you just want them to go to sleep and you're so frustrated, you have to pause and think of yourself as an 80-year-old man or woman and think what you would give to be back in that 27-year-old's body, putting his fussy 2-year-old boy to sleep. Like, you would give anything to have that moment back. So I think harboring those feelings and those thoughts when you're in the thick of horrible times, and because his parenthood is no joke. It is the most consuming, life-altering thing you will ever do, and there's no clock in, clock out. It's a never-ending game. But I think being patient with yourself and looking at the big picture and constantly reminding yourself of what the most important thing is and what future you and your future kids will thank you for the most, I think is the lens in which I hope to operate under. So I don't remember what the question was, but that's my answer to it.
There we go. All right. Well, I think that's a great way to close this out. We're going to be jumping to Matt Graham Unplugged. So if you're a member, we'll see you over on the website, which is notmattgraham.com/unplugged. We're going to be jumping into a few more questions that are some of the juicier topics. But in any event, I think that was a good one.
Yeah, I think we did great.
All right.
Awkward high five.
For the non-members who aren't cool enough, well, we'll see you in the next podcast.
Bye, guys.
Now about our son's name. And do you want to tell him the name? Are we going full name? Well, we need to tell them the full name to tell them the whole story. So go ahead.
Full name for our baby boy is going to be